Hello, Bobcats. Last part of our lecture on prehistory here. And if you'll notice on your lecture notes, this is the portion where it says migration. Please follow along for any vocabulary terms that are missing. We're going to take a look at the map here. And unfortunately, I'm not by my larger whiteboard, so we'll be using these boards today, okay? For this part of the video. Now, with migration, it's important, as review, for us to remember that humans evolved in Africa. Now, as we discussed earlier in this week, this is a theory that is debated, okay? It's known as the out of Africa theory. And this is accepted by a lot of anthropologists and scientists, but some people think that there might have been Homo sapiens emerging in other parts of the world at the same time as Africa, okay? Now, it's important to also know that we have about 120,000 years ago, groups start migrating into what's known as the Arabian Peninsula, okay? And from the Arabian Peninsula there, they move on to Asia, Europe, and also Australia before eventually getting to the Americas here, okay? Let's trace their movement, okay? Based on the out of Africa theory. And if you'll remember from those videos, a lot of those communities were in East Africa here. And as was just mentioned, about 120,000 years ago, roughly, we have the first groups crossing into this peninsula right here. The Arabian Peninsula, where we have modern-day Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Yemen, okay? And from there, you can see there are land connections into Europe and also into Asia. This is where it gets a little bit tricky. Now, if you'll remember, a lot of this migration is occurring when sea levels are lower because of the ice age, okay? So once we have humans migrating into the Indian subcontinent here, and then coming over into Southeast Asia, they eventually come into what's known as Indonesia. A lot of islands today, like Sumatra or Borneo here, okay? But at that time, it was actually a little easier, because sea levels were lower, to make a very, very small boat or a raft or something, or even walk to Australia. And if you'll remember from our videos earlier in the week, that was about 45 to 50,000 years ago. We have humans on the Australian continent, okay? And it's through this Indonesian island chain, which might have had more land exposed at the time that they got there, okay? Now, it's also important to know that by 15,000 years ago, we have groups crossing the still frozen, this is another one of your terms that are missing, Bering Strait, B-E-R-I-N-G, the Bering Strait into the Americas, okay? Now, this was a very, very cool thing that happened, and unfortunately, you can't really see where this is connected, but if you follow me across Russia here, we've got early humans in Europe, Asia, and even Australia. But once they get to this tip right here, and these islands here, you see the Bering Sea, that comes over on this side to where Alaska is. Now, if you'll remember, this is during that ice age. This strait is frozen, and places that would normally have ocean water might also be lower than they normally are. So humans are able to cross into the Americas and eventually populate all of the Americas, including as far south as southern Chile, okay? So once again, that's by about 15,000 years ago, we have groups crossing the still frozen Bering Strait. Last, as far as migration, you'll want to remember this is another one of your terms. You'll want to remember the word nomad, and this is one or a group who moves from place to place in order to find food, water, and shelter, okay? Now, another one that we spoke about was domestication, and we've discussed domestication, but we did not talk about the first animals to be domesticated, okay? It's important to know that the first animals domesticated were sheep, goats, and dogs. This was missing in your vocab. Make sure that you get that, okay? Dogs. Sheep, goat, and dogs. Lastly, it's also important to know, once we have the end of all this movement, and we move into the agricultural Neolithic age, we have communities starting to just settle. They stop moving around all the time. And they're going to move close to bodies of water and bring that water to their farmlands. How do they do that? Well, water can be directed to farms with irrigation, a process known as irrigation. You might have heard this word before if your parents have, let's say, a watering system for any of your landscaping in your front yard or your backyard. They are irrigating their plants with water by rerouting water to those plants, okay? Now, way back in this time, they're kind of digging trenches in the dirt and rerouting that water there. But that is something that can be done, okay? Anywho, that is the end of the Stone Age lecture today. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me, okay? This is a lot of review. And make sure to rewatch the videos if you have missed any of your terms that are missing in the lecture notes. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a great day.